Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking one of the absolute most fascinating and, frankly, geopolitically vital nations on the planet, Mali. This is a place defined by just a truly staggering paradox. On one hand, you've got a nation blessed with this incredible historical wealth, right? A profound cultural legacy built literally on mountains of gold. But then, on the exact same hand, it's a nation currently grappling with immense modern-day struggles, complex social conflicts, and deeply entrenched poverty. And because Mali's stability directly impacts the security of all of West Africa, and honestly, even global supply chains, understanding this paradox is absolutely crucial.
It really begs a massive question. How exactly did the home of history's richest man, a place that used to be a bustling center of global scholarship and trade, transform into a modern geopolitical flashpoint? Okay, let's dive into this, starting with the very ground this history was built upon.
So Mali sits right smack in the heart of the Sahel. If you're not familiar, this is that massive ecological transition zone in West Africa. It's sandwiched right between the harsh, sandy dunes of the Sahara Desert up north and the lush green savannas down south. And because of this really unique geography, it has been home to complex human civilization since an astounding 9000 BC. In fact, this wider region nurtured the incredible Nok culture. They were famous for these highly advanced, incredibly lifelike terracotta sculptures excavated at sites like Tuareg, so the land itself has literally always been a cradle for human innovation.
Let's move to and see how this builds. To really understand the Mali of today, we have a clear roadmap. We're going to unravel its past in 5 stages: the empires of gold, colonialism to independence, the modern political crisis, its resilient cultural heritage, and finally, future prospects for Mali.
Starting with Part 1, Empires of Gold, specifically Ghana, Mali, and Songhai.
To really wrap our heads around this era, we have to look back at these massive, highly organized states. They generated unimaginable wealth by completely dominating the lucrative trans-Saharan trade networks. It's kind of like a relay race of power, and the succession here is fascinating. It kicks off with the Ghana Empire, peaking around the 9th century, famous for its abundant gold. After it declined, a young prince named Sundiata Keita founded the Mali Empire in 1240, and this empire would eventually hit its absolute peak under the legendary Mansa Musa in the 14th century. But as history goes, power shifted again. The Songhai eventually overtook Mali, building a massive state centered at Gao, before the whole thing finally collapsed following a devastating Moroccan invasion in 1591.
But let's pause for a second on the founder of the Mali Empire, Sundiata Keita. During his reign, he constructed over 200 mosques, laying the early foundations for iconic cities like Timbuktu and Janneh. But here's the thing. He didn't just build religious infrastructure. He essentially turned Mali into an ancient tech hub. He dramatically expanded iron smelting technology all across the savannas, and is actually credited with introducing wheeled transport to West Africa. That fundamentally supercharged their agricultural and trade development, a real game changer.
And what exactly were they trading on those routes? Primarily salt and gold. The trans-Saharan trade routes were basically these massive economic arteries. You had salt from the deep desert coming south and gold from the forests moving north. And get this, under Mansa Musa, Mali controlled so much gold that during his famous pilgrimage to Mecca, he spent and gave away such staggering amounts of it that he literally crashed the economies of the nations he passed through. He accidentally devalued the entire precious metal market just by being that generous.
All right, moving into Part 2, Colonialism to Independence, the creation of the French Sudan. By the late 19th century, the scramble for Africa was in full swing among the European powers. And eventually, this scramble reached the borders of those former great empires. The French showed up in the 1880s, driven by a few key motivations. See, France was facing some economic downturns back home, so they urgently wanted to extract raw materials, like premium cotton, for their own factories. They also had this grand dream of building a massive east-west railroad linking Senegal and Algeria right through the region. And all of this was justified domestically under the guise of what the French Senate officially called a civilizing mission.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core conflict of that entire era. The French administration tried to impose a highly secular, centralized system, basically a copy-paste replica of France, or à la Française. But in doing so, they completely ignored the deeply entrenched traditional political systems and Islamic structures that have been governing the region for centuries. As you might guess, this top-down imposition created profound societal friction and massive resistance from the local Muslim elite.
That friction just kept building, eventually culminating in the post-WWI independence movements.
In 1960, Mali finally gained its independence, and Modibo Keïta stepped up as its first president. He established a socialist one-party state, heavily restricting foreign interests and centralizing the entire economy. Unfortunately, his radical agricultural policies and super strict controls led to severe economic deterioration, massive food inflation, and pretty deep political isolation. This turbulent post-independence era came to a really abrupt end in 1968 when Lieutenant Moussa Charrier overthrew Keïta in a military coup.
Which brings us right to part 3, the modern political crisis, the 2012 collapse and beyond.
Now, despite a really hopeful democratic transition back in 1992 under President Alpha Omar Konaré, which actually brought multi-party elections, a highly complex crisis had been brewing right beneath the surface. We can track the total collapse of 2012 almost like a rapid-fire domino effect. First, Tuareg rebels from a group called the MNLA launched a rebellion up north, seeking independence for a region they call Azawad. Second, right in the middle of that chaos, frustrated soldiers launched a military coup in the capital, Bamako. This created a massive power vacuum. Third, various Islamist factions, like Ansar Dine and Al-Qaeda-linked groups, took full advantage of that vacuum. They hijacked the Northern Rebellion and completely sidelined the secular MNLA. Finally, to prevent a total state collapse, a French military intervention known as Operation Serval was launched in 2013.
The fallout from this rapid sequence of events was just devastating. During their occupation of the north, those Islamist factions took over the ancient city of Timbuktu. They systematically destroyed precious, centuries-old scholarship and enforced severe, harsh restrictions on the local population. Now, a UN stabilization mission was deployed later in 2013 to help restore order, but the underlying fragility, it remained. This ongoing instability has unfortunately resulted in subsequent military coups in both 2020 and 2021, really just showcasing the deep, enduring challenges of governance in this region.
Okay, let's pivot to part 4, a resilient cultural heritage, the enduring spirit of Mali. It is absolutely vital we don't let these modern conflicts obscure the resilient bedrock of the country. I mean, look at these pillars of culture. Despite the crises, the ancient manuscripts of Timbuktu, written in Arabic and local languages like Adog, covering literally everything from astronomy to law, they remain one of Africa's greatest historical treasures. Then you have the griots, or Jeliw. These are the master oral historians, the poets, the ultimate memory keepers, who have maintained the social fabric of Mali since the time of the empires. And of course, there's the music. Mali is known for unique, incredibly complex rhythms that emphasize voice and tradition, and those sounds have influenced global genres far beyond Mali's borders.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this quote right here, detailing the traditional tea-drinking ritual. It perfectly captures the intimacy of Malian daily life. See, it's not just about gulping down a beverage. It's a deeply ingrained social practice. Sitting together, sharing tea on a mat, passing cups back and forth, it's literally an hours-long process of engagement, deep connection, and profound hospitality.
In fact, Malian hospitality is so paramount that it dictates almost all everyday interactions. There's this wonderful little anecdote from the source material that notes it's really not unusual for a taxi driver in Mali to take a complete sweeping detour with a paying customer still in the car, just to properly drop off a friend and engage in these elaborate, beautiful greetings about their family and chores. Sure, it might surprise a visitor at first, but it perfectly illustrates a warm society where social integration and honoring personal relationships simply take precedence over sheer transaction. Finally, Part 5, Future Prospects from Mali. Looking at agriculture, resources, and regional stability. As we look toward Mali's next chapter, we have to analyze the harsh economic and demographic realities shaping its future. Take a look at the staggering statistic. Despite being world famous for its gold, a massive 80%, 4 out of 5 people, of the Malian population actually rely on the agricultural sector for their livelihood. The survival of the vast majority of citizens depends entirely on crops like cotton, millet, and livestock farming. So, finding ways to modernize and sustain this specific sector is quite literally a matter of national survival.
It's not all daunting, though. The avenues for real growth are definitely there. Mali still sits on highly promising, completely unexploited gold and mineral deposits. And because of its sunny geography, it has massive potential for both solar and hydropower energy, which could drastically reduce their reliance on imports. Plus, they have a rapidly expanding digital economy and telecommunications sector. But there's a catch. Without proper regulatory frameworks and smart reinvestment, exploiting these minerals risks severe environmental pollution and that dreaded resource curse that has plagued so many other resource-rich nations.
And the stakes here? They literally couldn't be higher.
Mali has a population growth rate of 3.1%, which is one of the highest in the entire world. As a massive landlocked country, its ability to leverage its position within West African economic communities, like ECOWAS, and to harness its natural wealth is critical for the entire continent. If it succeeds, Mali can be a vital anchor for regional stability. But if it fails to address these economic and security challenges, it seriously risks sliding further into instability.
So the crucial point is this: Mali is a nation defined by an unbelievable paradox. It is a land of ancient scholarship, staggering historical wealth, and profound cultural hospitality, all while currently navigating one of the most complex geopolitical crises of the modern age. The history is there, the resources are absolutely there, and the cultural strength is undeniable. Can they weave all those threads together to build a stable and prosperous future? Well, that is exactly the question the whole world is watching. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it sparked your curiosity to learn even more about this incredibly fascinating country.